I've had my Marin Rift Zone 2 for a little bit over a year, so it's time to give this thing a proper long-term review. So this Marin Rift Zone 2 has been my primary bike for the last year and about 3 months now. It is a 2020 model. However, the 2021s haven't really changed much aside from the drivetrain, so if you're considering one of those, this is still going to be really relevant to you. Also, 2022, I really don't foresee them doing a lot of changes to it. 2020 was when they redid the geometry on the frame and changed some of the suspension travel and stuff like that. So they're probably going to stick with that for at least a few years. So let's go ahead and dig into this. First thing, the handlebars. They're aluminum. They're 780 millimeters wide. They're definitely good enough. I'm sure you could go with something carbon and save some weight or something like that, but I haven't felt the need to change them. Paired with those handlebars is a 35 millimeter stem. That's also fine. I've felt no need to change that. I'm sure, again, there's like lighter options around that have more holes cut in them and stuff like that, but it's definitely good enough. So coming out from the center, we're actually going to skip these controls and start talking about them a little bit later. Let's get to the grips. The original grips are right here. They are single clamp lock-ons. They are very grippy. They have this little pattern in them that just really kind of grips to your fingers really well. And I ran them for probably like 6 months or longer before I went ahead and put these ODI grips on. And the only reason I like these more is just because they're bigger, more chunkier, and my hands are pretty large. So they're just more comfortable to me. But if you have smaller hands, or even if you just like thinner grips, these are going to be great. Also, they're light too. I don't know if I mentioned that. Okay, moving down now to the fork. This is the Rockshox Recon. It has 130 millimeters of travel. I've actually increased mine to 140 millimeters, but I will be honest, I don't really notice any difference from doing that. This fork in general is actually just, I don't know, kind of okay. I mean, it is an air fork. You can put the correct amount of air in it that you want to get the sag where you want and things like that. For me, the issue that I have with it is if I put the right amount of air pressure in it to get the sag where it's supposed to be, I never use all the travel. You can maybe see this little O-ring here, or it's actually just a zip tie that I put on there. I'm leaving almost a full inch of travel, and this is after riding the bike a number of times through a number of different situations. And if I lower the air pressure, the problem is that the whole thing, when you brake, it just kind of dives down. So there's not a lot of like mid-range support to it. And interestingly, this fork is actually the same fork that you would get on the Marin Rift Zone 1. So that is a little bit of kind of like I don't know, something that I don't really love about it. You're paying for the higher end model, but you're getting the same fork as that lower end model. It would have been nice if they could have just upped it just a step. It's definitely usable. I've been riding it obviously this way for as long as I've had the bike, but I do have a plan for something else that's going to go on up here. So stay tuned to find out what that is. So up next is just the frame in general. To me, the geometry of this frame, the way that everything kind of just works together, feels great to me. It's got a nice slack head angle, but not too slack that you can't climb with it. It's not like a downhill bike, but it is great for just general trail riding. You've also got the internally routed cables, which looks nice. And just to me in general, it's just a really nice looking frame shape too. All right, let's make our way back a little bit farther. The dropper seat post, this is a Trans-X dropper seat post. It has 150 millimeters of travel, at least on the large size. I think that varies from the different frame sizes. To me, this is a budget seat post, but it's been actually really good for me. I would say maybe about 600-700 miles of riding into it, it started getting kind of sticky. You could feel it kind of grinding a little bit on the way down, and it was really slow to come back up. I would put a little bit of fork boost lube on this, and that would solve it for a day or two. But really, the real problem was it just needed to be rebuilt. Really, all you do is take it apart, clean everything out on the inside, which is not very complicated, re-grease it, and after doing that, I swear it works better now than it did when it was brand new. Coming back up, this is a non-stock seat. This is WTB Volt that I put on there. This is the stock seat here. Also, really not terrible. It's on the heavier side compared to the two of these. I could just feel a difference holding them. The padding is sufficient. There's just not a lot of relief in this, the zone, I don't even know what you call it, where your taint goes. And I wanted something that had a little bit more of a relief channel there. And I actually got this for free from somebody on Facebook locally. So thanks, dude, if you're watching this. I appreciate that. I really do like this saddle, actually. Okay, now to the rear suspension. The rear shock is a Rockshox Deluxe Select with Debonair sleeve. It's a lot of words. Rockshox just loves to just continue adding words and words and words to their naming of their shocks. This is actually a really good shock, especially considering the price range of this bike. I don't think you're going to find any other bike in this price range that's going to have a better shock than this one. It feels very plush. It's very smooth. I really do like it, but there's just one thing that really bothers me about it, and that's the fact that there's no compression adjustment. So a lot of shocks will have, I mean, generally I think they'll have like an open, a firm, and a lock. This is just open all the time. So if you live somewhere where you do a lot of like extended climbs to get up, and then you have some fun coming downhill, you're not going to be able to lock this thing out. So it's just going to make those climbs a little bit more difficult. Around here, it's a lot more of like quick ups and downs. We don't have a lot of huge elevation gains, so it's not a big deal, but I still really wish I had some compression adjustment on that thing. And this is actually another place where I have something planned for this too. It's actually going to be a sort of a combination thing in another video. So stay tuned, subscribe to the channel, and I'll be getting to that very soon. Okay, moving on to the drivetrain. What originally came on this bike was the Sram SX Eagle. So that's a 12-speed drivetrain, but it is the lowest, cheapest end model that Sram makes. And not only is it that, but they also went with the cheapest bottom bracket and crank combination, which is the SX with the power spline bottom bracket. It's cheap and it's really, really heavy. So is the derailleur, so is the cassette. The entire drivetrain is just, like I said, it's cheap. Cheap generally means heavy when it comes to mountain biking parts. So in terms of the actual shifting performance on that SRAM SX Eagle though, it's actually pretty good. It's pretty snappy, it's pretty precise. I was a little bit tough on it initially because of it seemed like there were some issues that it had, and those actually turned out to be related to something else, which I'll talk about in a minute. So what I have on here right now for the drivetrain is actually the Microshift Advent X, which is another budget-oriented drivetrain. It's a 10-speed. The cassette is massively lighter because the two biggest cogs are aluminum, and the range is almost as good. It's a 11 to 48 instead of 11 to 50, which is still fine for climbing. The crank is now a Truvative Descendant, and that is basically like a SRAM GX. It's owned by SRAM. They just kind of rebrand it if you don't want to have a SRAM part with the rest of your drivetrain that's not SRAM. And then I have a dub bottom bracket. That dub bottom bracket is also another thing that saved a ton of weight. I think this entire drivetrain, I can't remember, but it's well over a pound that it took off of the bike. On the 2021 model and also probably the 2022, you're going to get a Shimano Deore 12-speed. It's the same range, I'm pretty sure. It might go to 52, but at least on paper, that Shimano drivetrain seems like a better deal. It is a little bit lighter. I looked up all the specs on it. It's not hugely different, but I would say that it's probably a better drivetrain. Now, along with that drivetrain that you get with the Shimano Deore on the 2021, you're also going to get Shimano Deore hubs. And that may not sound like a lot, but it is actually a huge deal. So on this, the 2020 model, it comes with Marin branded hubs, and for the rear hub, they are terrible. If you're looking at a used one, check the hub, check the play in the cassette. I've killed 2 of these things in under 1,000 miles of riding. And after the second one died, I had the bike shop relace in a different hub, an Originate hub. It's got double the points of engagement of the original Marin one. However, on the 2021 model with that Deore hub, you are going to get those additional points of engagement. And I know the 2021 model is, I think, like $100 more than the 2020. For the hub alone, it is worth it. Quick comparison, though, to the 2021 Rift Zone 3, what you get are, again, the Marin branded hubs. And there's not really any information that I can find to show that those hubs are any different than the ones that came stock on this bike. So for the 2021 Rift Zones, you're getting a better hub on the Rift Zone 2 than you are on the 3 that costs considerably more. Okay, let's talk about the brakes now. These are the Shimano MT200s. There's a lot of bad information on these that you will find that say that they don't have enough power. And if you are doing really steep, really extended downhills, I can agree with that. Otherwise, I think it comes a little bit more down to setup. So these levers, I think, are actually intended for 2-finger braking, but I mean, who does that? Who wants to do that? Then you only have 2 fingers left on the grips. So what I've actually done is brought the brakes inboard of the shifter so that moves them farther in where my finger is just grabbing the outer edge of it. So that's giving me the maximum amount of leverage, and it really does make a huge difference. As far as the rotors go, they are 180 millimeters front and rear, so you're going to get a little bit more stopping power compared to, I think the rear on the Rift Zone 1 just has 160 millimeter. But these brakes really are not bad at all for general trail riding. Now to the tires. These are obviously not stock tires. If you've been following my channel, I've changed tires a number of times, and I'm actually going to change them again. I have another combination I want to try out. But the original tires that come on this bike are the V-Tire Flow Snaps, and they are on the heavier side and extremely slow rolling. They have no center tread at all, so it's like a gap down the center of the tire. So basically what's happening then is the tire is always digging into the ground, even if you're just going in a straight line. And that's really just going to make the whole bike feel sluggish. I really didn't like it right out of the box with those tires. One thing you could do is keep the original V-Tire Flow Snap in the front, because it is going to give you a lot of grip for sure, and then get something faster rolling for the back. Right now what I've got on it is a 2.4 Recon from Maxxis and a 2.4 Minion DHR in the front. And I really do like this combination in like 99% of the type of riding that I do. Maybe not that much, maybe like 95%. But when it gets a little bit loose, that Recon can struggle. In general, I really do like this, and it's made the bike feel a lot more lively and playful. So I think I've covered everything on this bike. To sum it all up, I still think it's a great bike, even though I've changed and modified and done all these different things. I think the 2021 version of it with the different drivetrain and the different hubs offers you much more value for your money, even though it does cost a little bit more. Like I said, I really wish they would have done a little more extra with this fork compared to, the cheaper model. Really wish there was a lockout here, but this is still a great value full suspension bike in this price range. So really, I think what you need to ask yourself if you're really looking at a Marin Rift Zone, it's almost like you kind of have to figure out, is this going to be enough for you? Are you going to be happy with the Recon fork? Are you going to be happy with not having a lockout? If you're not, and you're just going to upgrade them anyway, then you might as well get the Rift Zone 1. There's also one other thing you have to consider with the Rift Zone 1 is that the rear is still Boost 148 spacing, but the hub itself is a 142, and they use these little spacers. It's kind of a weird setup, but if you're going to be upgrading things anyway, if you're going to be upgrading the whole rear wheel, for example, why spend more to get something that you're just going to change out anyway? Another way to think about it too is if you know that these things just aren't going to be good enough for you, you probably could go ahead and just spend the extra money and get the Rift Zone 3. You're going to get a better fork, you're going to get a better shock, you're going to get potentially a worse hub. And I think you get better brakes with that one too. So, and a better drivetrain also. So, I mean, that, it's going to cost you quite a bit more money, but it's going to give you a bike that I don't think you're really going to have to upgrade anything at all on. For me, though, I don't regret getting the Rift Zone 2. I was definitely not going to spend any more money than this outright when I purchased it. So I hope you found this video informative. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below. I mean, I love talking about bike stuff, so if you got anything that I didn't cover and you're like, what about this thing? Just ask, and I'll let you know. If you're looking for one of these bikes, obviously bikes are in general just hard to find right now. I'm filming this, who knows when you're watching it, but I'm filming it in the spring of 2021. Supply is hard to find right now. I would suggest starting with local bike shops. If you're in Richmond, that means talking to the guys at Outpost. So give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Like I said, leave some comments. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see what I have planned for this suspension. I'm excited about it. I just don't have time to dig into it right now, but it will be coming very soon. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you next time.